I never thought I'd become the target of our homeowners association president, but then again, I never expected someone like Diane Walters to wield so much power in our quiet suburban community. Most people called her Karen behind her back, which seemed fitting given her perpetual desire to speak to the manager about everything. When I first moved into Oakridge Estate 6 months ago, I had no idea the HOA would become the bane of my existence. It all started with a bird bath. Yes, a simple stone bird bath that I placed in my front garden. According to Diane, it violated Section 14, Paragraph 3 of the HOA handbook. No outdoor decorative elements exceeding 18 and in height without prior written approval. I hadn't realized I needed permission to let birds have a drink in my own yard, but Diane made sure to educate me with a bright yellow violation notice taped to my door. Mr. Reynolds, we take our community standards very seriously here, she told me with a saccharine smile when I confronted her about it. Her perfectly highlighted blonde bob didn't move an inch as she tilted her head condescendingly. Perhaps you should have read the full handbook before installing unauthorized fixtures. I removed the bird bath, thinking that would be the end of it. I was wrong. Over the next few months, I received citations for grass being a quarter-inch too tall, having my garbage bin visible from the street for more than 4 hours after collection, and my personal favorite, excessive holiday decorations during Christmas. Apparently, my modest display of lights was garish and disruptive to community aesthetics. But I'm a retired postal worker with 35 years of service. I've dealt with my fair share of difficult people. So, I took it all in stride, following the rules while keeping my opinions to myself. My monthly pension check was my reward for those decades of service, and I wasn't going to let someone like Diane ruin my peaceful retirement. Then, one Thursday, my pension check didn't arrive in the mail. This was unusual since the postal service had never failed to deliver it on the first of the month. I waited another day, thinking there might be a delay, but when Friday came and went with no check, I began to worry. I called the pension office and they confirmed the check had been mailed on schedule. It should have arrived by now, Mr. Reynolds, the representative said. I can initiate a trace on it if you'd like. I agreed and they started the process. Meanwhile, I had bills to pay and not enough in my checking account to cover them all. I was contemplating which payments to postpone when I happened to glance out my front window and saw Diane marching up to Mrs. Garcia's house across the street, violation notice in hand. Something about the smug confidence in her stride made my stomach churn. The next day, my neighbor Tom stopped by. Hey, Jeff, did you know Diane has been taking mail from people's boxes? My wife saw her doing it early one morning last week. She thought maybe Diane was collecting misdelivered mail to return it, but it seemed odd. A chill ran down my spine. Did your wife happen to see which houses she took mail from? Not specifically, but she said Diane was working her way down the street. Your house would have been on her route. That's when I decided to set a trap. I called my old colleague at the post office, Mike, who still worked as a carrier in our neighborhood. Mike, I need a favor. Can you let me know what time you'll be delivering my mail tomorrow and maybe hold any important-looking envelopes for me to pick up directly? Mike agreed. And the next day, I waited near my window around delivery time. Sure enough, not 10 minutes. After Mike dropped off my mail, I saw Diane strolling down the sidewalk, pausing briefly at each mailbox. When she got to mine, she glanced around quickly before opening it and rifling through the contents. I recorded the whole thing on my phone, zooming in as she pulled out an envelope that looked like it came from my credit union and slipped it into her purse. I was furious but kept my cool. This wasn't just an HOA violation. This was mail theft, a federal crime. I called Mike immediately and explained what I'd witnessed. This is serious, Jeff, he said with concern in his voice. I'll contact the Postal Inspection Service right away. They don't mess around with mail theft. 2 days later, I received a call from Postal Inspector Sarah Martinez. Mr. Reynolds, we've reviewed your video evidence and have reason to believe Miss Walters may have taken your pension check as well as other mail from your neighborhood. We'd like to set up a sting operation with your cooperation. The plan was simple but effective. The pension office issued a replacement check, which would be delivered to my box with a tracking device inside the envelope. Inspector Martinez and her team would monitor it, and if Diane took the bait, they would catch her red-handed. The following week, my replacement check arrived on schedule. I watched from my window as Mike delivered it, giving me a subtle nod as he placed it in my box. Then, I waited. About an hour later, Diane's silver SUV pulled up across the street. She got out, smartphone in hand, pretending to take photos of my lawn, presumably looking for violations. Then, when she thought no one was watching, she casually walked over to my mailbox. I held my breath as she opened it, quickly grabbed my envelope along with a few other pieces of mail, and stuffed them into her designer handbag. She was just turning to leave when a nondescript van pulled up and two people in professional attire stepped out. Miss Walters. Inspector Martinez called, holding up her credentials. I'm Postal Inspector Martinez, and this is Inspector Johnson. We need to speak with you about the mail you just removed from this box. Diane's face went from smugly satisfied to ghost white in seconds. I was just collecting Ms. Delivered mail to return to the post office, she stammered, clutching her handbag tighter. Ma'am, please place the bag on the ground and step away from it, Inspector Johnson said firmly. This is ridiculous. Do you know who I am? I'm the president of this HOA. Diane's voice rose to that familiar shrill tone I'd heard so many times during community meetings. I'll have your jobs for this harassment. Inspector Martinez remained perfectly professional. Miss Walters, we have video evidence of you removing mail from multiple boxes in this neighborhood over the past 2 weeks. The envelope you just took contains a federal pension check with a tracking device inside it. Mail theft is a federal offense punishable by up to 5 years in prison and fines up to $250,000. By this point, neighbors were coming out of their houses, drawn by the commotion. Diane looked around frantically, suddenly aware she had an audience. This is all a misunderstanding, she insisted, her voice cracking. I was just trying to protect our community standards. The inspectors weren't buying it. They asked her to open her handbag, which revealed not only my pension check, but several other pieces of mail addressed to various neighbors, credit card statements, utility bills, and even a birthday card. As they placed her in handcuffs, reading her rights, I couldn't help but feel a mixture of satisfaction and pity. Diane had gone from HOA tyrant to federal criminal in the space of 15 minutes. A search of her house later revealed dozens of pieces of stolen mail, including my original pension check, which he had apparently been too cautious to cash. Yet the evidence was overwhelming, and Diane was charged with mail theft, a federal felony. Her attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the prosecutor, impressed by the scope of her theft and the clear premeditation, pushed for significant consequences. 3 months later, I sat in the courtroom as the judge delivered her sentence. 2 years in federal prison, 3 years of supervised release thereafter, and a fine of $75,000. As the reality of her situation sank in, Diane's perfectly made-up face crumpled. But who will run the HOA? She wailed, looking around desperately, as if someone might save her from this fate. The judge merely shook his head and called for the next case as officers led her